There's a moment in every marriage where you think everything is exactly as it should be. You get comfortable, routines fall into place, and you assume that whatever hurdles come your way, you'll face them together. At least, that's what I believed. For 10 years, my husband and I had built a life that felt stable, if not a little predictable. But underneath that peaceful surface, a storm was quietly brewing, one I never saw coming. I'm Hannah, and my husband Josh was the love of my life. We met at a mutual friend's wedding, the kind of pictured romantic encounter that you read about in novels. He was charming, thoughtful, and had this quiet strength that made me feel safe. We clicked instantly. Our first date was a long walk through the city, ending with dinner at a small Italian place where we talked for hours. From that day forward, I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. Josh and I got married 2 years later in a small ceremony with just close friends and family. We were young and full of hope. Our marriage wasn't always perfect, but it was solid. We supported each other through everything: new jobs, moving houses, family struggles. We had built a comfortable life together, or so I thought. The first sign that something was wrong came during a seemingly innocent Sunday afternoon. We were sitting on the couch, watching one of those nature documentaries that Josh loved. I leaned over to ask him something, but when I spoke, it was like he didn't hear me. His eyes were glued to his phone, his fingers moving rapidly across the screen. This had become a common occurrence lately. Josh, absorbed in his phone, while I sat next to him, feeling increasingly invisible. I tried not to let it bother me at first. We had our phones in our hands all the time, didn't we? Social media, emails, group chats. It was just part of modern life. But this felt different. There was a distance growing between us, and it wasn't just about the phone. It was in the way Josh had stopped really talking to me. Our conversations had become superficial, more about logistics than feelings. When was the last time we had really connected? I couldn't even remember. Still, I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. We were both busy with work, and maybe we were just in a bit of a rut. After all, 10 years of marriage can do that to you, right? You get caught up in the day-to-day and forget to nurture the relationship that started it all. That's what I told myself. One night, as we were lying in bed, I decided to bring it up. "Josh, is everything okay between us?" I asked, trying to sound casual even though my heart was pounding in my chest. He turned to look at me, surprised. "What do you mean?" "Everything's fine," he said, but his voice lacked the warmth and conviction that I was hoping for. "You've just been distant lately," I pressed. "It feels like we're not as close as we used to be." He sighed and turned his back to me, pulling the blanket up over his shoulder. "It's just work, Hannah. I've been stressed out, and I'm tired. Can we not do this right now?" I bit my lip, feeling a familiar sting of rejection. "Sure," I whispered, rolling onto my side. But deep down, I knew that something was very wrong. The weeks that followed were a blur of anxiety and self-doubt. I found myself constantly questioning everything. Had I done something wrong? Was I not enough for him anymore? The distance between us only grew wider, and I could feel myself falling into a spiral of worry. Josh was still coming home late from work, still glued to his phone, and still giving me that same cold, distracted energy. One evening, I decided to do something I had never done before. I went through his phone. It felt wrong, like a betrayal of trust, but the doubt and fear gnawing at me left me no choice. I needed to know what was going on. I opened his messages, scrolling past the usual work group chats and family texts, until I found a name that didn't belong. *Erica*. My heart dropped into my stomach as I clicked on the conversation. What I found confirmed every fear I had been trying to push away. The messages weren't overly romantic, but they were intimate in a way that made my skin crawl. There were inside jokes, shared photos, and late-night conversations that Josh had clearly been hiding from me. He was talking to her, texting her every day, sometimes for hours on end, while I sat right next to him, clueless. I felt sick. How long had this been going on? How long had he been sharing parts of himself with someone else while shutting me out? My hands shook as I put the phone down, my mind racing with 1,000 questions, none of which I had the answers to. All I knew was that my husband, the man I had trusted with my heart, was keeping secrets from me. That night, I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what I had just discovered. I replayed every moment of the past few months in my head, wondering how I had missed the signs, how I had let things get so bad without realizing it. But the truth was, I had trusted him completely, and that trust had blinded me to what was happening right in front of me. The next morning, I knew I had to confront him. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I waited until after breakfast, when Josh was getting ready for work. "Josh, I need to talk to you," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to stay calm. He looked up from his coffee, sensing the seriousness in my tone. "What's wrong?" "I went through your phone last night," I said, the words feeling heavy on my tongue. His face paled, and for a moment, I saw the panic flash in his eyes. But he quickly recovered, putting on a mask of calm indifference. "Why would you do that?" "Because I've been feeling like something's off for months now," I replied, my voice growing stronger. "And then I found your messages with Erica." He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, staring at me as if trying to decide how much to confess. Finally, he sighed and rubbed a hand across his face. "It's not what you think, Hannah," he said quietly. "Erica is just a friend. We talk sometimes, but that's it." "A friend?" I repeated, my voice shaking with anger. "You've been talking to her every day, late at night, hiding your conversations from me. That's not just a friend, Josh." It didn't mean anything, he insisted, his tone defensive now. "I've just been stressed, and she was someone I could talk to. I didn't want to worry you." I stared at him, my heart breaking with every word he said. "You didn't want to worry me, so you shut me out and turned to her instead." "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "It's just we haven't been connecting the way we used to. I don't know when it started, but I felt like I couldn't talk to you the way I used to." Tears filled my eyes as I listened to him. "And you think this is my fault?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "No, that's not what I'm saying," he said quickly. I didn't know how to fix it." I wiped my tears away, feeling both devastated and furious. "You don't fix a marriage by turning to someone else, Josh. You talk to your wife. You don't lie. You don't hide things. You work through it together." He stood there silent, guilt written all over his face, but it didn't change what had happened. It didn't undo the betrayal I felt deep in my bones. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I said, my voice breaking. He reached for me, but I stepped back, shaking my head. "I need space. I need time to figure out what I want." Josh's face crumpled, but he nodded, understanding that the damage was done. "I'm sorry," he whispered, but the words felt hollow. Sorry wasn't enough to fix what had been broken. For the next few weeks, we lived in a strange limbo. Josh stayed in the house, but we were like strangers, barely speaking, avoiding each other as much as possible. I couldn't look at him without feeling the sting of betrayal, and I knew he was walking on eggshells, trying not to make things worse. One night, after another silent dinner, I sat down with a glass of wine and thought about everything that had happened. Was I ready to give up on my marriage? Could I forgive Josh for what he had done, even if he hadn't technically cheated? The emotional affair had shattered my trust, and I didn't know if I could rebuild that foundation. But part of me still loved him. The memories of our good times, the life we had built together, tugged at my heart. I didn't want to throw it all away without trying to fix things, but I also couldn't ignore the pain he had caused. The next morning, I asked Josh to sit down with me. "We need to talk," I said. "I'm not ready to end things, but I'm not sure if we can fix this either." I need to know if you're willing to put in the work to rebuild what we've lost." Josh looked at me, his eyes filled with remorse. "I'll do anything, Hannah. I know I messed up, but I want to make things right. I want us to be okay again." I nodded, though my heart was still heavy with doubt. "It's going to take time, and it's going to be hard. We can try counseling, but you have to be honest with me. No more lies, no more secrets." He reached for my hand, and this time I let him take it. "I promise," he said softly. "I'll do whatever it takes." And so we began the long, painful process of trying to heal. It wasn't easy. There were days when I wanted to give up, when the anger and hurt bubbled up and threatened to drown me. But slowly, little by little, we started to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. Counseling helped us open up to each other in ways we hadn't done in years. We talked about our fears, our insecurities, and the ways we had both contributed to the distance in our marriage. It wasn't just Josh's fault. I had been so focused on work and keeping up with the day-to-day that I had stopped prioritizing our relationship. We had both let things slip, and it had led to this breaking point. But through it all, we kept fighting for each other. There were still moments of doubt, moments when I wondered if we were just delaying the inevitable. But there were also moments of hope. Glimpses of the love we had shared in the early days of our marriage, the connection that had brought us together in the first place. It took months, but eventually the storm passed. We weren't the same couple we had been before the betrayal, but in some ways, we were stronger. We had faced our demons, confronted the cracks in our foundation, and come out the other side with a deeper understanding of each other and ourselves. Looking back, I realized that the silent storm had been building for a long time. We had ignored the warning signs, hoping that things would just get better on their own. But marriage isn't like that. It takes work, constant attention, and a willingness to face the uncomfortable truths that sometimes lie beneath the surface. Josh and I aren't perfect, but we're trying. And for now, that's enough.